Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Laura Poirot, and I thought I'd do a quick, well, I don't know if I always say quick video, but who knows if it will be quick. Just a video on censorship at the moment. I am still enjoying my break. I do visit, usually in the mornings, I visit the social media and YouTube, and I make sure that I'm updated and I talk to all my friends and so forth about all the updates and things like that. And the topic as to why I want to discuss censorship today is because I think there's some sort of sway or some sort of message sent out that Todge and Nutt have conducted a military grade kind of operation regarding censorship with the UK and US government in tow, without linking it to the royal family or to the monarchy. Now, I think the first thing that should be discussed is that is simply not possible without the monarchy to have a UK-US government alliance. Also, there's a failure of mentioning that this is a Five Eyes censorship campaign, and it's across Canada and Australia and New Zealand, as well as the UK. And the reason for that is, as I've shown you in my video that's been now over a year ago, that the monarchy through Archwell, through Nutt and Todge, paid for policy change here with a WEF globalist fake non-for-profit research agency, which were backed by foreign companies that are all WEF globalist partners, and the Australian quote unquote that was in charge of these this fake non-for-profit that was really under the company purpose is also a citizen in America, if not just a citizen in America, and is a globalist leader. And he's in charge of the framework and the movements of soft power, including climate change back in 2014. So yes, this is why I don't believe in climate change and the weather controls that we have here, because it's all been a strategy. And there's been people, the same people behind it, that are the same people behind what the royal family are doing now, and etc. etc. But this is then you've got the move to Canada and involving Canada. Then you've also got New Zealand and Australia are pretty much intertwined. So you've also got that idiot Jacinda Ardern, who should be in jail, having being sentenced to a life imprisonment. She's also an executive of Earthshot, is it? So that's New Zealand involved in all these globalist policies. I mean, it's just a whole Five Eyes alliance. And if you know anything about the Five Eyes alliance, that was really done when the British Empire expanded its power after World War II and involved the US. So that was where the Five Eyes alliance came. Before that, there was an alliance that Britain held power over, which was Australia, New Zealand. I think it was Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I know it was India, and I think it was, did I say South Africa? Or I said Africa? It was definitely Africa and India, and then New Zealand, Australia, and UK. I'm pretty sure that was it. Or there was a four alliance or something like that, but it involved those countries anyway. And then after World War II, that changed. Now, another thing is, if we were going to say that a military grade operation has happened under the duo, and they've been able to control all media and have had to pay for these campaigns. Well, firstly, 95% of their income has been from the royal family, has been the monarchy. 5% was the one that was exposed, that was published about the public funds. That would be compensated through the deals and so forth. But 95% still came from the British monarchy. Needless to say, with power like that, you wouldn't need money. You obviously have a ruling empire involved of some sort that is over UK and US government, and Australian government, and Canadian government, and New Zealand government. You wouldn't have alone just a duo joining Aspen, and CIA plants like Gloria Steinem and stuff like that, and just popping in and controlling all the media throughout the world. Just through their, 95% of monarchy funds and their 5% of Netflix deals. Okay? No, that's not possible. Well, it's just stupid. And I think you need to bear in mind, this is where there's weakness in any of these arguments, is there's no account for history. And you have to understand the history of how things have proceeded and the power that lies within the royal family. World War II, that documentary on Edward and his abdication and his Nazi agenda and his treason, that explains that when Edward committed treason over a long period of time during World War II and leading up to it, the British monarchy controlled all British media. And of course, this was before the Five Eyes Alliance, so they couldn't control the American media. The American media talked all about it, but they controlled all British media to the point where his treason was hidden during that whole entire war and thereafter, up until 1990s. That sort of control, the royal family, you don't mean to tell me that's not involved somehow in this whole campaign, and that Todge and Nut need money to pay for changing these, for controlling the mainstream media and the whole global mainstream media. Not to mention if they had partnerships with the UK and US government, Australian government, New Zealand government, etc., that Canadian government, that they wouldn't need to pay shit. So anyway, let's go back to, I think one more point to make is the fact that Trump was in power in 2020 when Nutt and Todge started their censorship campaign in America. Putting that out there because people just like to think this is a Biden administration issue. No. Trump was in power. That was when they started the censorship campaigns, I think dating back to May-ish 2020. Yeah. And it didn't start there. This is where, again, history is important. It started, and this is what I really want to, the real points I want to make. It started back literally when Nut was published, when her identity was published, when her contract became public. And that was way back in the last day of October 2016 when their relationship became public. And then on November the 8th, it started with the attack. Well, the royal family made an unprecedented move, unheard of, because, and still questionable, largely questionable, and people shouldn't just bat an eye and ignore it. Even now, the fact that Kensington Palace made a statement, a public statement against mainstream media, controlled British mainstream media and US media, seeing that everyone's now linking this to a US government, UK government alliance and partnership with this whole campaign stuff and censorship, then this would also predate or date back to 2016, would it not? With the monarchy, no? Anyway, they make this statement about the mainstream media attacking Nut because of her race or ethnicity or whatever you want to call it. They started the censorship narrative by as soon as the relationship was published on a global front. And they started with a statement by Kensington Palace, nonetheless, by the royal family, nonetheless. And it started there. So the statement, 8th of November, Communications Secretary, you know all this. I'm not going to read it out. But this is also by Kensington Royal, which is now the Prince and Princess of Wales, or always has been, right? Yeah. So that's where it starts. 4 days later, and I know during that time, there was definitely support by the mainstream media trying to add credibility to the narrative of racism and the attacks and mainstream media being evil and trying to manipulate the public. The public was not yet gaslit in a way, but then at the same time with this article, they are gaslit. So they're trying to blur the lines between media attacks and public attacks. But I'll just disprove this claim to you anyway very shortly. By 12th of November, so 4 days after that statement, Piers Morgan, this plant, then backs it up with Royal Rota, Daily Mail, through an article falsifying that he met Nut the night that she met up with Todge, which doesn't really make sense with the dates either. They went caught up at a pub and had a chat, and in this chat, of course, it's added and included to be relevant that the actress was submitted to serious unpleasant trolling when filming Suits. Now, I want to get to this because it's just so silly, and it's a part of the construct, and I can show you that it's just completely fake. 5 minutes. Yeah, bullshit. So Todge and Kensington Palace and the royal family didn't just include racism, they included sexism as well from social media trolls. I don't think the Kensington Palace would say social media trolls, but anyway, I guess that was a part of it, right? Yep, so that's the 13th of November 2016. So either way, this is the new narrative that it's not just media, it's also social media trolls. So they are gaslighting the public. People wanted to kill her, not Rachel. Why? She was voted like one of the most hottest women that year, I think, and I have seen nothing but on social media adoration for her. And she had a club. She had clubs. No, not possible. There was a maybe they've changed up the wording, but they did say this was done through emails, not messages, hate messages through direct email to Rachel, to Nut. So yeah, that didn't happen. Just silly stuff. just in time before the engagement is announced, 4th of November 2017, which she also talks about wedding invites or wanting a wedding invite, which is funny, Yvonne. Like, how could Yvonne know if she hasn't spoken to Nut since her graduation in whenever that was, which that university certificate is, and even for the university that she says it was. How could you know any of this? Anyway, foreshadowing again and retelling of the narrative, supported and endorsed by Nut's supposed family, Yvonne Markle, 4th of November 2017, when the engagement is announced 23 days later in the UK. Yvonne tells everyone about the racism in the family, so supporting the censorship narrative and the narrative of of the identity politics of Nut, of her sex and her race being the main catalysts for social media and mainstream media attacks prior to her children being born, and supposedly, of course, and using them as reasons and other catalysts for the same thing, to then push censorship. So you can see here, November 4th. I won't get into it. And then Christmas, December 2017, just after the engagement was announced, that Princess Michael of Kent was wearing the blackamoor brooch that then sparked racism, when in fact the brooch was on her outdoor jacket or coat. It says that this is, again, Royal Rota, would have been introduced to her at the intimate private gathering, so inside the house, obviously, when the coat was taken off. So she wouldn't have even been wearing the brooch when Nut was confronted by the brooch, supposedly, and there was racism. And then you can see that the royal family then forced, she was more than happy to comply with and willingly go with this narrative, this royal family narrative of racism when it didn't happen, making a formal apology for the brooch, which then also shows that this is intentional, is a public display of the brooch, when in fact it doesn't make any sense, given the narrative that she would take that coat off once she was inside the house for Christmas lunch. I shouldn't say house, I should say palace. So that wouldn't have happened. It didn't take place, and this was all an intentional PR campaign. So again, this is all royal family, all in Britain, all before the US ever took place. Now, I have skipped one important step, which was the engagement interview. The engagement interview under CNN on YouTube actually exposes both the contract of Nut, knowing that this whole thing has been a contractual agreement, and it also exposes the whole mission of Nut and Todge, even while they're still under the monarchy, and under monarchy instruction and are working royals, which is, all these globalist policies, including censorship and controlling what the public, controlling their freedom of speech. So under this link, I won't click on it and I won't send the video through because then there'll be a copyright issue. But in this, there's a chapter at 6 minutes 37 seconds in, of the interview, Nutt says the following: but even though I've been on my show for, I guess, 6 years at that point, so she's talking about when this whole media attack happened by social media and mainstream media back in 29th of October 2016, or was it 29th of October? Well, when she basically was, it was publicly announced that she was in a relationship with Todge. Thereafter, all the media that came out that was supposedly racism, all controlled by the monarchy anyway, or Royal Rota. Well, usually a lot of it was Royal Rota, not all of. She says, but even though at the time of that happening, it was 6 years at that point for working on her show, she wasn't aware of the tabloid culture. She produced the first episode and series of Suits started in April 2011. So her saying that it was 6 years of her being on Suits when these attacks happened by early November 2016 is untrue. It's 5 years. So she's not even aware. I mean, she's too stupid also. I apologize for even saying she was smart, but she's not even aware of the narrative anymore at this point. And this is early on. This is like a second kind of big public show. And she's still not aware of what's going on. But she can't even align with the narrative, the fake reality. She says that it's been 6 years between 2016 and 2011 that Suits that she was on the show Suits when it wasn't. So obviously this whole thing is just created. There's also that Kensington Palace engagement statement stating that she was hanging out with Todge at Windsor by May 2016. So, and then you've got all the Royal Rota articles saying that they met, in May in Toronto, then in June in UK, and it all changes, doesn't it? Just changes constantly. So none of this was real. And then Todge says later on that, very soon after, that their assigned mission is, quote, to carry out the right engagements, carry out our work, and try and encourage others in the younger generation to be able to see the world in the correct sense, in the correct way, in the right way, in the only way, rather than perhaps having a distorted view. So a view that they don't want, that is not agenda-based. So there was already a gender at play here. There was already a mission at play, and it was done by the royal family. And to even suggest that there's a military-grade operation run by two idiots that are only known because of the royal family to have that sort of power by means of money is just insane and just not worth your time considering. Thanks, guys.